says connecting. Does it say that for you too?
Yes.
Okay.
Some way to do this over the... Okay, sorry. Now that we're connecting, I should...
Okay, we have one viewer. We have two viewers. Did it give you an option to send an email to your subscribers?
I don't think when I joined, I got that option.
When you joined this thing, because it told me it gave me a thing to turn it on.
I posted like a Substack note promoting it.
Yeah, and I hold on. So this thing, we can live stream. Look, we got 25. It's picking up. We can live stream, and you can't watch us. You need the app to watch us or to do it. So I'm seeing if you know how this. You ever go to the Substack.com page, and that page has like these icons on top, these little thumbnails. And sometimes if if someone is on the app right now and they subscribe to me or you, they're going to see this, the first thumbnail. They're going to see this all the way at the left.
So my subscribers will see it because, like, do you have to insert me as the conversation?
I did. I invited you.
I know. Okay, so once I even join, then that becomes a notification for my followers as well, even though you're hosting it?
I believe so. Ask your followers. I got the message saying you're streaming. Someone says underneath. I think hopefully they're talking. I heard Richard's going to campaign for Trump. Okay, yeah. Jeff Smoking says, I got the message saying you're streaming, but I don't know if that means for me or you, but I assume it means for you because that's what we're talking about. Yeah, you got it. So yeah, Andrew Dulgan, do you see it in the computer, in the desktop or the app? We're trying to just figure out how this shit works. From London.
There's got to be a way to do this from the computer, right? Like, why?
No, there's not. There's not. I've talked to them about it. There's not.
Really?
It's specific to the app. So you go to Substack.com.
I watched one while I was driving a few days ago with Iglesias and Nate Silver, and it looked like they were on the computer, but I'm not sure. I mean, who knows? I didn't watch.
They looked like they were on the computer. That looked very professional. I think they were doing it with Substack. I think there was something very special going on there.
Oh, maybe, yeah, they were giving them.
Yeah, but I've talked to them about this. You cannot. Let's see. You cannot. App notification from Tracy Substack. Tracy opposes the free market. Okay, that's our friend. This is our friend usually Wash. We used to always wash, but now he's not washing anymore. Okay, cool. We got 60 people within a few. I have to stand back really far in order to see this thing is okay. I'm gonna do like this.
Is my head properly? Because I have to like kind of very carefully position my phone so it looks okay. So there you go.
Yeah, it's you look fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this thing is, Substack's always working out the kinks. It'll get better over time.
All right. So to start out, Richard, how would you have answered the question if you were being asked in a CNN town hall, what is your greatest weakness? Because here's what I would have said. Mm-hmm. My greatest weakness or my greatest flaw is that I'm just too gorgeous. It's distracting for people. When I enter into a room, I radiate such beauty that it just dominates the entire dynamic of the room, and then everybody gets sidetracked from the main task that they were going to be focusing on.
Yeah. Well,
that's like my question when I watched it. I don't know if you saw that clip. Was like, how couldn't Kamala just like make a joke out of the question, as Trump would have done, no doubt.
I didn't see the clip. What happened?
Oh, so it's Kamala Harris. You may have heard of her.
Uh-huh.
She did a CNN town hall last night, and one of the final questions was one of these seemingly more easy human interest type questions, where she was asked, "What is your greatest flaw?" Or I think, "What is your greatest what's the criticism you would make of yourself?" And she said, she gave the classic answer that somebody would give if they were asked that in a job interview, which is that she works too hard.
Mm-hmm.
And she's by too many intelligent people who want to give her proper advice or something. She didn't even assert a flaw.
I work too hard, and sometimes I just burn myself out. Well, why is that a weakness to her?
It's not. She didn't answer the question. That's why it was such a ridiculous answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't watch the CNN town hall. I mean, I saw clips. Kamala has not been performing well. She's not a good politician. There was some excitement at the very beginning because she could just give a speech, and there was just all these vibes. people were ecstatic because Biden dropped out. But yeah, she's never been good on her feet. And yeah, that's just, we're seeing that as time goes on. Did you vote yet? Do you have early voting in New Jersey? Is that where you still are?
Yeah, I'm in New Jersey. Early voting starts on Saturday. So I just got home last night after about 2 weeks in various swing states. So I think I'll hang around for another couple of days so I can cast my blank ballot and make everybody angry.
Yeah, so you're not going to vote for president?
Well, I will write in a cartoon character or something, and then maybe So no, I'm not going to vote for any of the major candidates.
And you guys don't even have ballot referenda, do you? I love ballots. I
Yeah,
love
there
ballot
are
issues.
ballot questions. There are ballot questions that aren't binding. So when New Jersey legalized marijuana, for example, they did put a quasi ballot referendum on the ballot, but it's not binding in the same way that it would be in California or Colorado or
Mm.
mostly states. So it becomes then like a guidance to the legislature to enact some law in accordance with what the public voted, but it's not even mandatory.
Yeah.
So kind of a relic of old style machine politics that dominated the northeastern states.
Yeah, we got like tons of. I must have voted on, yeah, 15 of them or something like that. Local, I had one for my city, whether they're gonna raise our property tax by like $500 a year to give police and firefighters more money. There's a bunch of LA County ones.
How'd you vote on that one? Because that you have contradictory instincts there. Like,
No, I don't want to give anyone my money. I live in a town that has no, we have like no crime and no issue. I don't know what the police want. You know what? I was at, my
so
son had a
you
field.
voted to defund the police.
Yeah, I'm defunding the police. They're not keeping up with inflation. I went to there was a my son went to a firefighter. They took him to a fire station, and I like walked over there with them today as a field trip. And yeah, some parent or some teacher asked, "How should we vote on PS?" Which is the initiative. One guy's like, "Vote yes, we need it." And the other guy's like, "I am not allowed to take a position while on duty." And so yeah, so they were there lobbying us in person. So I voted no on that. I got to vote no on rent control, which was very uh, exciting for me. I got to vote yes on locking up shoplifters and so forth. I got to vote no on what else was there? Um, yeah, I abolished affirmative action a few years ago. I helped abolish it. But there was just a bunch of tax stuff. They're funny, these initiatives. They're like, you don't know like anything about them. And then they give you like an estimate, like this is going to cost like $3 billion or bring in $3 billion. And it has a bunch of endorsers too, which is funny. It's like this one's endorsed by the Chicago teachers, or not the Chicago, California Teachers Association, like these other, that it has like people opposed. And then there was this gay marriage referendum to put it in the state constitution, which I voted yes on. And then it was like, in favor of it. It's like yes, like it was like Equality Alliance and whatever, all these others. And then it's like oppose like Reverend John Smith, just like some random like priest got his name on the ballot. I was
How
like,
do you how do you qualify to get your name added as one of the official supporters or opponents? Like, could you have gotten on the ballot as somebody who
it
opposes?
looked like this gay marriage thing. It was looked like this guy was just somehow got on the ballot. Um, so yeah, there must be a process.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. I was registered to vote at one point in California, but I don't know that I ever studied the ballots. I don't know if I ever got around to voting actually, but the ballots are much more complicated. It seems. New Jersey does have an open Senate seat for the first time in a while because Bob Menendez
Uh-huh. Yeah, you're getting that. What's that
was
guy's?
prosecuted by the anti-Republican deep state
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and office, and he was actually toying for a while with running as an independent because he
Mm-hmm.
withdrew from the Democratic nomination, and so he was at one point saying that if he were acquitted in his trial, then he would run as an independent against the Democratic nominee and the Republican nominee. But then he got convicted, so it's fairly likely that the Democrat will win. Who is sort of interesting, Andy Kim. I've met him a few times. He's more. He's not. He doesn't emerge from the same entrenched Democratic machine system as
Mm-hmm.
we did, and as
Mm-hmm.
other of his Democratic predecessors did. So he might behave somewhat differently, at least just from the standpoint of personal corruption, you would think. But he also has a different sort of political lineage than had been customary for statewide elected Democrats. So
What's
I
this?
don't know.
What's this? Does he have ideas? Is he ideologically liberal, very liberal, or moderate, or what?
I would say fairly Democratic, moderate. I mean, he was elected in 2018 as a national security Democrat, elected to the House, that is, in a fairly Republican district. So he won. He wasn't just somebody who won one of these uncontested House seats. He actually had to run a competitive
Is
race.
this like the first Asian male not from Hawaii to be in the Senate?
I think it might be. Yeah, yeah. He's Korean.
Yeah. Well, that's good. East Asian men will get some representation. East
Yeah.
Asian. Has there ever been an East Asian woman in the Tammy Duckworth, from Thailand? Uh,
Yeah.
who?
Illinois. I had an exchange with her last month that went. That was pretty interesting. At the debate, the first presidential debate. So I was in the spin room.
So, did you vote for? Are you going to vote for Andy Kim?
Probably not. I'm just going to leave the ballot blank, most likely.
You just don't. You just are too cool for the two parties.
It's not that I think I'm cool. I think I'm decidedly uncool. It's just that people can employ whatever rationale they like in deciding how to cast their ballot or not. I actually think that one of the best things to push back on nowadays is this overwhelming propaganda that everyone must vote or else they're abdicating their civic obligation. Because I do think there can be virtue in abstention.
Yeah.
Because yet that's still you signaling a preference in a way and also depriving marginally, by dint of your vote, whatever mandate the ultimate winner gets. Because if turnout is really low, then people can, if there's less of a popular vote, that can be seen as depriving a mandate. I mean, it's not very straightforward, but in terms of my own personal rationale, and also I just don't happen to support either candidate, and I don't find any of the third party candidates really credible.
So nobody has
I
anything
don't
close to your
anyone
ideology.
don't
So if
feel
I
like
was voting on ideology, I would have voted for Chase Oliver. I'd vote for the Libertarians. I have, that's easily the closest. I'm against third parties on principle because I think that two parties are sort of permeable and you should try to make them into what you want. But it's funny that you have. There's a lot of choice, right, between Democrats, Republicans, Greens, libertarians, whatever else happens to be on the ballot. You can't find any of that as close to you, Mike Tracy. You are so idiosyncratic. You're such a special snowflake that none of that is close enough to get your vote.
Well, I don't think. I mean, the Green Party and the Libertarian Party might have certain discrete policy positions that I would find amenable. But I just don't find the whole enterprise of either of those parties especially credible. Like, I think they're kind of just vanity campaigns.
So you're anti-third party like me.
It's not that I'm anti-third party on principle. If there were a viable third party,
well, they're not viable because you don't vote for them.
Organization, I could see theoretically voting for it. So I'm not against principle. I just think that these particular third parties on offer are not credible.
I mean, but because people don't vote for them. That's the whole point. You say they're not credible. If people voted for them, they would be credible. So it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well, it's not just that people don't vote for them. It's that the Green Party in particular just kind of pops up every 4 years, usually with Jill Stein at the helm.
Yeah.
And the only reason why she's seen as of relevance is because people debate who she's detracting votes from.
Yeah. So you could have a unique problem with
there was
Jill Stein.
If there was like a legitimate organizational presence that had popular support beyond just throwing out a certain figurehead every 4 years, then maybe it might be more viable. Now, the Green Party does have some elected officials, usually more on a local level. But I would have some ideological problems with the Green Party as well. Like, I don't necessarily buy into the environmentalist maximalism where, like, the solution to every problem is the most far-reaching, like, Green New Deal scheme imaginable. Thing that I focus on as much. And even so, I mean, I probably would agree more with Jill Stein than the major party candidates on, for example, Israel and the Middle East. But even on Israel, I just find the activist approach to Israel off-putting for the most part, where they just run around shrieking genocide, and it doesn't really lend itself to a more reasoned interrogation of the issue at hand.
Yeah.
So, although, for example, in this election cycle, a couple of Democratic incumbents got ousted in large part because pro-Israel groups such as AIPAC got involved in their primaries. I couldn't be that devastated at them losing because I thought that the way that they generally handled the issue of Israel was just so shrill and kind of emotionally manipulative that it didn't lend itself to a rational critique that I think is necessary. So I acknowledge I'm hard to please. I'm not saying that everybody else needs to share my perspective on how or whom to vote for, but for the most part, it would come down. I mean, I really do look at it. Can I support either of the two major party candidates?
Yeah, that's me
And
too. So you're against you're like me.
for me, is no, I cannot support Kamala Cheney hyphen Harris or Donald Adelson hyphen Trump. So there you have it.
Do you believe do you believe the stories in the Atlantic about the Hitler? What do you think of that? Are you with the MAGAs who say they're just making it up?
Well, the John Kelly stuff, that's from his mouth.
Yeah,
So
right. Well,
to
the
the Mac
other ones are from people.
Kelly,
Like, I don't think the Atlantic is making up sources when they say 10 administration officials or whatever. I don't think they're making those up. So yeah, you have John Kelly who's on the record. But you have like other things that like Mark Esper who says Trump wanted to shoot protesters in the leg. That's that's from Mark Esper. He said that on the record. And so you believe the ones on the record are not the ones on the record off the record, or what do you think?
well, I've heard the John Kelly story before from a reliable source. I never reported it because I wasn't able to, but I have heard it.
Mm.
So I've heard it independent of what just came out.
Yeah, which John Kelly story? The Hitler one? Because there's like stuff about like
The
all
John
the
Kelly story that I had heard before is that John Kelly had talked to his Trump's chief of staff, right? He was the head of the Homeland Security Department, actually. Then he was recommended to come in and take over as chief of staff after Reince Priebus. And because Trump wanted to be surrounded by tough generals. And
yes,
John Kelly really does look like he came right out of central casting in terms of like, he looks like he could be in Full Metal Jacket. Um, so the story that I heard, again, from a very good source, is that John Kelly had talked to Trump, had been in conversation with Trump, and Trump was complaining about the lack of loyalty amongst his subordinates, and was saying something to the effect of, I need military subordinates who are as loyal as Hitler's subordinates were to Hitler. So John Kelly, or he needs, no, let me rephrase that. Trump was saying he needs military subordinates who are as loyal to him as the German generals are, like kind of
yeah,
just a vague historical reference. And then John Kelly went through, do you mean in the Weimar period?
yeah, yeah. I mean that's the exact story in the Atlantic.
Yeah,
So you heard it too.
I heard. So, I mean, the context was, I think, just kind of Trump grousing. I don't think it was Trump. I mean, the fallacy in the liberal depictions of this is when I first heard the story and when I'm hearing this version of it now, I never had the slightest notion that Trump was actually trying to signal any kind of affinity for Hitler or Nazism.
But I think this guy, there is a pattern where, like, if he talks about Kim Jong Un or Putin, like his eyes light up. I mean, there is a pattern. Like he could, he could say, "I want generals to be loyal." Like I don't know, Ulysses S. Grant to Abraham Lincoln or something. He could have had like some other historical example. But when he wants someone who's like tough and cool, he always goes to some authoritarian. I mean, I think that's, I don't think it's like anything beyond like that. Like he always has this thing like, oh, me and Kim, he sends me beautiful letters. Me and she, great buddies. Putin, I get along great with Putin. It's just like Hitler is just like another guy.
It's not that complicated. So if Kim Jong Un says, "Oh yeah, we'll throw you a giant military parade when you come in to North Korea," Trump would see that as a very heartwarming gesture and then praise.
Yeah, he
him.
loves Shinzo Abe too. He loves Democratic leaders who would praise him.
Great counterexample, like him, Shinzo Abe is one of the foreign leaders that Trump has always
Yeah.
praised maybe the most, and that's not in line with this. Oh, Trump
Yeah.
is
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. So
dark.
you're right. He does. Yeah.
About Modi. I mean, Modi came and people might call him an authoritarian, but he is democratically elected. Modi came and did a whole tour of the United States when Trump was in office, including going to Texas and addressing a giant stadium full of people at an event called Howdy Modi, and
Yeah.
Trump was there. So, I mean, does that stack up? I mean, I think, notwithstanding whatever
Yeah.
system of government the head of state presides over,
Yeah.
Trump is going to like the person if
Yeah. That's true.
flattering.
That's true, but he does always do this thing where he's like, he never talks about like Modi or like Abe the way they govern like their country. Like he's not interested in like, oh, they passed some great tax reform. He never talks like that. It's always like Kim Jong Un. He's one tough cookie. He really keeps them in line, right? This is like the way he thinks about leaders, and two, he likes democratic leaders if they praise him too. But like he specifically likes the idea of just like someone to like he doesn't talk about anything else leaders do that he happens to like. They like me, Trump, and they're tough on their enemies. That's his two things he likes leaders for.
You say that, but like one of the consistent kind of conundrums of the whole Trump saga is that whatever flattering words Trump might have offered to, say, Kim Jong Un, it also does happen to be the case that in the first year of Trump's presidency, the U.S. and North Korea were frighteningly close to a nuclear.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't
yeah,
think
yeah.
it was a high possibility, but high enough to make it worrisome. And I'm saying that based on stuff that I heard after the fact that, again, I can't really.
I was watching TV at one point. There was an NBC report that was a chyron on the screen, and it was just like, NBC sources know that America's going to attack North Korea this weekend. Like, I don't know if the story ever came out what happened, but then like soon later they were like, oh no, it's not confirmed or whatever. But this was an NBC, like it was like a thing that was like reported as about to happen. I don't know.
Yeah,
Was it
time
was
NBC getting leaked. I mean, NBC was getting leaks that proved to be true. I don't know if you recall, but I think it was that same like summer when Rex Tillerson, who was still the Secretary of State at that point, was reported to have said that Trump is an effing idiot, and it was frantically denied, and then he eventually confirmed it. But that was initially in NBC. So yeah, I
Oh
mean,
man, this is gonna be wild. This is gonna be wild. Who's this guy gonna appoint? How is he? Is he gonna be able to appoint people who don't end up hating his guts? Like every like what is it? 40 out of 43 or 43 out of 46 or something of like the people who Trump appointed in his cabinet. I think it was ended up like opposing him, not supporting him this time. Like, is that gonna? Do you think that's gonna repeat? Do you think like in 4 years from now, if he wins, like all his cabinet officials are gonna dislike him, or has he figured this
well,
out?
I mean, what I think what's highly notable is that what seems like the only senior level cabinet appointee whom Trump never had a petulant falling out with is Mike Pompeo.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Mike Pompeo is right back in the fold now. Trump was just on the Hugh Hewitt show this morning.
Yeah.
Hugh Hewitt was saying, I know some people on your short list for Secretary of Defense, because I guess now Mike Pompeo is going to go for the trifecta from CIA Director to Secretary of State to Secretary of
Mm.
Defense. And so he named Tom Cotton, Mike Pompeo, and Mike Waltz, who's a very hard line interventionist congressman from Florida. And Trump said, "Yeah, those are all people that are on
Yeah,
my."
I mean, but I think if he would have said Ronald McDonald, I think Trump would have said yes. I think Hugh Hewitt really is sort of wish casting, maybe a little bit.
I, no, I just
But no, I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't think what Trump says means anything, but like, uh, I wouldn't be surprised if Pompeo's Secretary of Defense. That would make a lot of sense.
think what happened in the first administration is that the cabinet officials who had no aspiration of further progression in like Republican Party politics, they were like a Tillerson or a Mattis.
Yeah.
Uh, they were the ones who were more likely to kind of just accept having a falling out with Trump and then just
Yeah.
going
The
along with.
military, the generals. Yeah.
Whereas Mike Pompeo, who clearly had further political aspirations, was contemplating even potentially running for president in 2024 if Trump hadn't run. Obviously, he is going to see it as within his interest to maintain cordial relations with Trump for his own advancement. So I think it's going to be a similar dynamic, and this idea that Trump's going to deep
Michael,
state.
I'm sorry, I'll go to the comments. Do you believe this guy? He says on Trump appointees, 2024 is different than 2016. There is a new coalition: Gabbard, RFK, Vivek, Musk, Posobiec, Posobiec, etc. Are those going to be the cabinet appointees in your opinion?
I mean, this idea that there's this like brand new coalition. Buy it. I mean, RFK Jr. I mean, it's very possible that those people will get some certain positions in the government. I'm not discounting that as a possibility. RFK Jr. could get some obscure panel in the Food and Drug Administration that he can like recommend staff for. I'll see. I don't know. I mean, maybe
Yeah,
some
and Randall Sawyer says no. He's saying transition team.
type thing.
He's
But like,
clarifying. Yeah,
I just don't.
yeah.
This idea that Trump is this like earth-shattering new coalition. That's a way for people who want to vote for the Republican nominee to do so under the perceived auspices of like combating the so-called establishment. That's why I've been focused on RFK Jr. lately with the
Yeah.
article that I published, because his function now is basically to give license to people to vote for one of the two duopoly parties, as RFK Jr. once put it, but think that by doing so, they're really sticking it to the establishment or deep state or military industrial complex, which I find to be a total farce.
Yeah.
And I base that on, I mean, so one of the ironies of like, Trump has a new coalition this time. Don't worry. Okay, so that means we should just discard everything he did in his first term. Like I thought his first term was the greatest 4 years in presidential history.
Yeah.
But now these people are implicitly saying it was a failure. So therefore, reward Trump by giving him another 4 years
Well,
because
Trump is. I think that yes, Trump is
promised.
great. Yeah, Trump is great. He appointed these treasonous generals who make up stories about him loving Hitler and our deep state stooges, and now he's got the real people, RFK and Vivek, who are like the unity coalition. Yeah, it's dumb. It's very dumb. No,
So do
this
you
is
vote
why
for
I
Trump?
voted for Trump. By the way, if I believed
Yeah,
RFK,
so what's the logic there?
huh?
So aren't you endorsing low human capital?
Yes, I mean yes. Unfortunately, I'm trying to. Yeah, I was. If these people were right, if I agreed with these people, it would be RFK and Tulsi Gabbard running the government. I'd vote for Kamala probably. I'd probably vote for Chase Oliver or maybe even Kamala. I would be so disgusted if I thought RFK was going to be in government. But yeah,
Yeah,
my
no, I don't think. I mean, to say that RFK Jr. is going to be running the government is just to kind of misstate how the government
well, I
works.
mean,
But it's
if
not
he was a
inconceivable
cabinet
for Trump
secretary.
to give RFK some like advisory position
Yeah,
with.
yeah, yeah. I don't expect him to make serious policy. Yeah, I don't expect him to make serious policy. There's a little bit of a uh, delay, but it's manageable when you talk. But it's okay. Um,
How's it now? Okay.
yeah, yeah, that's better.
I might
Uh,
move my chair for a second. I don't know if that was it, but
anyways, so yes, I mean, human capital is not the be all end all. Human capital is a consideration in the broader question of who to support, who to vote for. I think communists were elite human capital. I wouldn't vote for communists. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with sort of the. I don't know, like the centrist critique of Trump, like the centrist critique, right? Like that he just doesn't care about democracy. He'll tell people to overthrow, to investigate his enemies. Um, I think that's a real concern. I mean, he basically was. I think a lot of these guys were saying that he was basically saying investigate my enemies, and they wouldn't do it, right? And then he would end up firing them all or getting new guys. And so this is going to be something that's
the only person in America who has fought with other people online about what you argue is the genuine menace of January 6th, who then went on to vote for Trump.
Am I the only one who does that? Yeah. No. You know who else is very actually we should all respect for this? Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro actually believes that Trump tried to overthrow the government on January 6th. He
Has he?
thinks it was, huh? I think so. Our friend, I don't know if you know Bentham's Bulldog. He's one of these bloggers, and he cites me and Ben Shapiro as two people who make this argument that Trump tried to overthrow democracy. Let's see here.
Ben Shapiro has emphasized that lately, especially in light of his little trip to the.
Yeah, he probably has not emphasized it. That yeah.
Ben Shapiro has discussed that ever since he and Trump took their trip together to the tomb of Rabbi Schneerson, 10th anniversary, and then
Yeah.
Day, and Shapiro starts out the show by saying, "Mr. President, I can't wait to vote for you. I'm praying for you." And that's half the interviews that Trump does now. Same with Hugh Hewitt today.
Wait,
Like
how recent was this Shapiro interview?
uh, Trump was on Ben Shapiro's show the day after they appeared together at the tomb of Rabbi Menachem Schneerson, who is. Did you see this? Like the Grand Rebbe of the.
No, but what was this? How long ago was this?
It was on the October 7th anniversary, so earlier this month.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, I want to watch this interview. I'm going to watch it later. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think Shapiro probably. Yeah,
Like
I'm guessing he
didn't
hasn't
come.
said it lately. Yeah, he hasn't. He doesn't emphasize. Everyone is more strategic than me. I can't help myself. I'm very expressive. I'm very incapable of sort of being diplomatic. Yeah, I think Ben Shapiro's heart, knows nothing has changed since January 6th. Kudos to him for not lying, or just trying to pretend like it didn't happen. I think his argument is that basically the guardrails held, and he said at some point the founders designed the system to get around a man like Trump. So I think like me and Ben Shapiro are sort of in a class of our own as far as this kind of cynicism about him.
But it's bizarre to say that if a president needs to be constrained by guardrails, that you would then vote to re-empower the president.
Well,
That
I
you,
think he thinks he'll do good stuff on policy. He'll appoint these judges and these, government officials and so forth. But then he'll be like, "Oh, lock up all my enemies too, and like ignore the election and install me as president forever." And then like on that, everyone will ignore him. I think that's the
but
argument.
okay, so I mean, you and I have debated in the past because I actually don't have such a dire view of January
It's not just
6th.
January 6th. No, it's the
Or
election to January 6th.
the entire post 2020 election, escapade.
Mm.
Um, I mean, I think it was discreditable on Trump's part just because he was pumping out such a geyser of bullshit, and people got radicalized by it and believed a abundance of wrong information about the nature of the election, and then some of them
Mm.
rioted at the Capitol, and then they were dispersed within an hour, within like 2.5 hours. Legislative proceeding was temporarily interrupted. But if I had the interpretation from the beginning that this was a coup attempt, that it genuinely did jeopardize the constitutional order, that it could have like sent the United States hurtling into oblivion, then I would find it hard to reconcile that because, there might be some federal judicial appointments that I find preferable. I mean, I could see then agreeing with Liz Cheney in the sense that if I had her interpretation of January 6th, having that be the paramount consideration in who I vote for. So I just don't know how you can genuinely believe what I recall you believing, saying you believed about January 6th, then saying, I'm just going to vote for Trump for like conventional Republican reasons because I
Yeah.
want like lower taxes and some judicial appointments.
Yeah, I mean, it's a concern. It's like it's not just the be all and end all. The only thing I want to know, like if he was running against someone who respected democracy, but was like Stalin otherwise, right? Who would accept elections, I wouldn't vote for Stalin instead of Trump. Kamala is not Stalin, so it's like a big minus for Trump, right? It's like it's like a point system where he tried to stay in office. He gets negative 20 points. Kamala gets negative 35 points for her views on speech and economic policy. And that's it. I mean, I respect the Liz Cheney position. I mean, I think there's something to that. It's just about how much you weigh these things. Like, why does it have to be? Like, why can't it be someone, supports the longshoreman strike union, the strike by the union? Why couldn't that be my litmus test? It's basically, I think that America is going to be a poorer, worse place to live if liberals get their judicial appointments and their administrative state appointments. And that's it. And it sucks that Trump did that. I don't think he's going to do it again. I think he'll be term limited out. So it's not like I don't think he's actually going to abolish democracy. I think he should probably face consequences, but it looks like he's not going to face consequences. That'll be the court system, but whatever. I mean, it's a concern. It doesn't have to be a complete binary sort of litmus test. I don't know why it has to be. I'm not like a person who thinks like George W. Bush let's blow up Iraq as long as they have democracy. That's all that matters.
Yeah, I'm not saying it has to be a binary litmus test. I'm just saying that if people believe what the common conception is of January 6th among the kind of more liberal intelligentsia and or have the Liz Cheney view, which I don't. I mean, just to again be clear, I never shared that view.
Yeah.
But if you had that view and you thought that the United States was teetering on the brink of collapse because Trump tried to stage a literal coup and overturn the constitutional order.
Yeah, I mean, well, the time to oppose him.
How that couldn't rise to the level of a litmus test. Like,
I
what
think
that?
What was the last thing you said?
What would rise to the level of importance of becoming a binary litmus test, if not that, if that's what you believed?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't. I don't know if there is one, but like other aside from something like kill everyone or something like that. I don't. Nothing is that. Few things that we debate are that it's a sort of total of it's a total of policies and personnel and the coalition. See, I think the person at the top is not necessarily that important. I mean, I think that Trump and Ted Cruz and DeSantis basically appoint most of the same people, despite what these people think about RFK being, a huge player in the government. I think Kamala Harris and Biden and maybe Elizabeth Warren appoints more lefty people, but basically they appoint most of the same people. They appoint the same judges. When Trump tried to overthrow the election, I think he should have been convicted. I mean, I think that it's a funny thing that McConnell at the time said he could have tried to whip the votes, but he didn't, and he ended up, I think, like 6 or 7 Republicans voted to convict him after January 6th. I think that was the right thing to do. But yeah, democracy sucks. Economic statism sucks. They both suck. I think economic statism is worse. And that's what it comes down to. And again, if Trump was going to abolish democracy this time, we can't undo the past. The question is, what does he even do from here? I don't think he's going to stay in office forever. So, it's a big minus, but that's, neither candidate is perfect.
Yeah, a friend of mine called me yesterday and was saying, he's generally of my disposition on many of these questions, but he said to me, I think I'm potentially like begrudgingly starting to believe that the MSNBC portrayal of Trump is right, meaning he thinks that it could be the case that Trump actually is a full-blown fascist, despite being more skeptically inclined toward that argument for years, in part because the New York Times within the past few days published like a magazine type article where they went and interviewed Paxton. What's his first name? Like the
Ken
scholar
Paxton.
Ken Paxton. The political theorist who was one of the who kind of came up with a theory of fascism.
Oh no, Paxton is the Attorney General of Texas.
Paxton fascism. Robert Paxton.
Okay, yeah.
Was in his 90s.
Yeah, I saw this headline.
Book on fascism or on collaborationist France, like Vichy France.
Yeah.
And became a sensation, is always been seen as an authoritative figure on fascism. And this piece spells out that even, when Trump was first running in 2016 and then even into his presidency, Paxton had pushed back on this reflexive labeling of Trump as fascist because Paxton questioned the utility of throwing around that term so capriciously. But then after January 6th, Paxton was watching the mob riot and said, okay, this qualifies as fascism. And there's just a whole New York Times article on his evolution on that question. And they tie, my friend was tying it into Trump's rhetoric becoming even more dark and sinister, talking about the enemy.
It is deranged.
I don't find it, and my argument to him was, I don't find that to be meaningfully different from the 2016 version of this whole debate, when Trump was also being hysterically accused of representing some kind of fascist movement because people would latch on to some quip that he made here or there. But when you look at his record as president, which I find to be the most instructive as to
no, here's
developing my
the
perspective on
but
this, it just
yeah.
doesn't comport with any semblance of fascism. So I think there ought to be a critiques of Trump. I think there's actually not been enough sensible, rational critiques of Trump, especially within like alternate media, which is now more or less transformed into like a Republican propaganda fire hose. But that doesn't mean that the kind of cloistered elite liberal position on Trump, where they're always paranoid about fascism at the gate, is any more viable to me.
Well, so the response, the standard MSNBC New York Magazine Daily Beast response to this is that Trump hired people Mattis and John Kelly and so forth, H.R. McMaster, serious people, and they basically. I mean, you can go watch. There's a Chris Hayes was ranting about this a couple nights ago. Basically,
Yeah,
they were like free.
this was his argument that I listened to on the plane yesterday.
Hayes.
Ezra Klein had a whole
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah, exactly. Oh, yes, exactly. So you know this argument. You know the standard argument. So
yeah,
I mean, I find that credible. Why do you not find it credible?
Credible because the so-called adults in the room, like McMaster, like Mattis, like maybe even Kelly to some extent, they were seen as representing this adult influence on Trump because they were advocating just standard fair establishmentarian policies, particularly in the domain of foreign affairs. So Trump escalated the war in Afghanistan early on in his first term. It was like August of 2017, I believe. And it was reported at the time that Trump was supposedly reluctant to escalate in Afghanistan, just like, Biden's been, quote, reluctant to send Ukraine various weapon systems, or John F. Kennedy was reluctant to escalate.
You're talking about foreign policy. Well, first of all,
I don't find these supposed adult influences or guardrails to produce particularly beneficial outcomes, because the supposed instinct within Trump that they were constraining primarily was whatever fleeting and inchoate instinct that Trump had not to engage in interventionist foreign policy.
Well, okay, there's that. I mean, there was some stories where Trump wanted to go further than these guys. So the story was he wanted to kill Assad, and then Mattis just refused to carry out the order. So there were times when Trump was more escalatory than these guys were willing to be. So it's not as simple as like these guys wanted more hawkish policies and Trump didn't. The other thing is like the adults. I mean, there's other things you can do besides have a standard hawkish foreign policy. You could shoot protesters. I'm sure Michael. I mean, I could. I'm almost okay with it. I mean, I'm almost. I want toughness on protesters, but I think as someone from your political persuasion would say like it's good that they wouldn't go along with that or they push back on that idea. There's all these things where he's like,
so because of our differing political perspectives, you would have been in favor in June of 2020.
No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
In mowing down protesters.
Not federal troops. That would be too much federal power.
They were just opening fire on protesters.
Not protesters. People who are rioting. When you see them go to, looting a building, yeah, I would be at that point.
And you think the ideal law enforcement strategy to deal with looting is to open fire on the building?
Yeah, I would do that.
I mean, that's
law and order. Now, yeah, I want to do it protest, and I wouldn't do it for the federal level. I don't think that's a federal government. I think it's actually, this might seem a silly distinction, but I think it's actually an important distinction to the federal government.
But it's a gray area with Washington D.C. in terms of who has.
Okay, in Washington D.C. maybe, maybe Washington D.C. Okay, shoot Washington D.C. protesters, and not if they cross over to Virginia. You leave that to the governor. So this is something like this is the kind of stuff that Trump often wants to do, right? And then his other stuff where like he's telling them go after Hillary, go after James Comey. There's a lot of stories like that. They don't do it because they just don't listen to him. Right. It's funny, even the Ukraine thing. The first, the first. Well, I guess that was a case of Zelensky not listening to him, but he does this stuff all the time. He tries to personally use government to benefit himself politically, and so like the idea is like he will do more of that stuff. He will do potentially crazy stuff like kill Assad, just kill people and sort of randomly shoot protesters. Um, I think that's the argument. Um,
The difficulty is that Trump just blurts out such a high volume of wordage
yeah.
that it can be difficult to discern what is him just musing about things or tossing out ideas or intuitions,
But don't
however
you think?
fully
Yeah, don't you
developed.
think the people who knew him? Don't you
The
think the
order
people
is good.
who?
So, like, different if so. Trump's not like most politicians, for a lot of reasons, but also because he's not a lawyer. And lawyers tend to be very studious about their word choice, even in private situations, potentially. So it's difficult to imagine Kamala just kind of musing aimlessly about, oh, maybe we want to just send the military to mow down protesters. So the point being, I don't know if Trump musing about killing Assad ever rose to the level of an actionable order. I'm not sure if there's ever been conclusive reporting on that. My guess would be it was him just kind of like in a kind of fit of pique or in like a moment of frustration, just saying, "Oh, maybe we should just kill him." And does that translate to a tangible order? Probably not. But then people, in retrospect, can take snippets of whatever he was
Yeah,
musing on, and then construct the most
yeah,
average. So that confusion, that ambiguity, is why I find it most instructive to look at the actual policy record. Right? Look at the stuff that's in the record that doesn't have to be interpreted through this like Trump heuristic,
yeah.
and we know with certainty what was done or what wasn't done.
Well, I mean, right. But like it just can't be just look at the record and now I'm not going to look at any evidence of like anything that changed or anything that's going to be different and I just assume the 2024 election, yeah, 2025 Trump is going to be the exact same as 2017 Trump when he's in a completely different situation. I mean, I think it's compelling that like okay, so me and you did never work with Trump on a daily basis. We weren't in the office with him. We weren't making decisions with him. These people were. And so like what is like actually the correct context of understanding these things, like they are in a much better position than you or me. I don't think John Kelly has any motive here. Like I see these conspiracy theorists on Twitter like, oh, he's on boards for something that's doing something in Ukraine and just like retarded stuff, like they're just coming up with stuff like why all these people who worked with him are freaked out and think he was serious and dangerous. Like that's pretty compelling, right?
Yeah, I mean, I do think John Kelly is not somebody who relishes the spotlight. So he wouldn't want to become a bone of contention in the final week and a half of an election if he didn't think that there was some legitimate reason or some legitimate necessity in order to do so. I just don't necessarily find people of his ilk, like a Mattis or a Mark Esper, who was the defense secretary. I mean, one of the idiocies of Trump supposedly combating the military-industrial complex is that he literally appointed the top lobbyist of Raytheon as his defense secretary,
Yeah.
and in the form of Esper. So these are people who have a particular like ideological perspective, who aren't just saying that they needed to counteract Trump's most genuinely destructive instincts, but that they felt that Trump was transgressing certain boundaries of like ideological propriety.
Well,
Um,
it's that too. Yeah, it's both.
it's
It's
hard to disentangle. So I guess I wouldn't just automatically assume that people of that orientation, that political orientation, necessarily have the higher ground of on Trump because they have a certain predisposition about what correct U.S. policy is, and you saw this happen with RussiaGate, where people of a similar inclination who were in the FBI or the CIA thought that Trump was a danger because he was transgressing longstanding expectations about U.S. policy toward Russia. And then, even in the case of the FBI, launching criminal investigations into Trump on the premise that Trump could be endangering U.S. national security by virtue of his foreign policy views on Russia. Now, it turned out that didn't amount to much in terms of the actual policy that Trump pursued vis-a-vis Russia. It was actually more bombastic and bellicose than Obama's was. But the point being, people within the government who are sort of in this ideological framework, viewing Trump as an interloper,
Yeah.
I question their judgment and ideological motivations more, enough that I wouldn't just automatically assume that they are more credible than Trump on policy questions.
Yeah, I mean that's such a good argument, Michael. I wish I thought of it before I justified voting for Trump. Yeah, yeah, you're
So
right.
why did you vote for Trump? I mean, just explain it.
I believe that we should have smaller government, lower taxes. I believe prediction markets should be legal. I think that Elon Musk should be able to. I think Elon Musk should be able to try to launch rocket ships without worrying about bothering a bird or something like that. I mean, some of these stories about like the what the government's been doing, what's been they've been standing in the way of sort of these innovations. I think that
But wait,
prediction markets should be
isn't
legal.
there a
What's that?
Democratic administration in power now? And every like couple of weeks, I see Elon Musk launching a new rocket. So is he
Yeah, yeah,
really?
and I mean he also moved from California to Texas because California was too restrictive and too anti-business. So there's going to be a difference in,
Oh,
huh?
but we're talking about a federal election right
Well,
now.
I mean the Democrats' ideology I think is the issue here.
But how has Democrats' ideology impeded Elon Musk from shooting rockets into space? Well,
Well, because I told you the FAA basically makes life very difficult. So they have these sort of discretion in what kind of harms they look for, these delays. There's something about from the California Coast Commission that was in the federal government this time. But yeah, I mean, there's a million of these things. There's basically there's regulations in every single industry that I think are generally going to be worse and more stringent under Democrats. Democrats took the side of the longshoremen union, who were going to shut down basically the entire East Coast shipping because not just they wanted higher pay, they got higher pay. What they wanted was no technological innovation. They wanted the ports not to become more efficient because that would potentially harm the number of jobs that they had. Right. So there's it's just there's price controls, there's antitrust that I don't believe that I think that the Lena Khan regime at the FTC has gone too far. This is little boring stuff, but I think it's the sort of some of this stuff that determines how wealthy our children and grandchildren are going to be. And free speech, by the way, Democrats on free speech are very bad. I mean, I think that getting the judges are going to protect that. There's the civil rights law. I've written a book on this. Civil rights law is downstream. A lot of the free speech issues at university campuses and so forth are downstream from civil rights law. And so, yeah, I think liberals are bad on speech, bad on markets, and that just overcomes like all the ways that Trump sucks. Oh, and by the way, foreign policy. I'm the opposite of you. I love Israel. I wanted to win the war, and so this is another good reason to support Trump.
all right. Well, that's an inspiring message. I mean, Elon Musk involved me even less inclined to support Trump because I have never seen such a comically outlandish oligarchical intervention in U.S. politics.
Yeah,
Perhaps since Bloomberg tried to comically obtain or acquire the 2020 Democratic presidential
yeah,
nomination, just flooding in, I think it was, hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe even close to a billion, like overnight. And, bypassing just like
yeah,
any real democratic input into how elections are structured. So for Elon Musk to be going around like, holding $1 million lotteries if people sign up for his, bogus PAC, which is just an end run because he's trying to, say, I'll give you $1 million if you vote for Trump, but he can't do that because of the precise legalities.
yeah,
And he, this is like I'm not like on principle against wealth, but if the richest person on earth is just like cooping up in Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
and very well could tip the balance of a state because of nothing really other than his massive wealth, I find that to be more just instinctually disturbing than maybe you do.
Yeah.
And also, I've been using Twitter/X longer than you, I think. So I've been using it regularly since
No,
2009,
but I've noticed. I know how retarded.
and it's just it's. And I'm not even somebody who was getting all hysterical about his takeover of Twitter in 2022. In fact, I kind of defended it because I thought it was just very histrionic how people were saying that this would destroy the company. It didn't destroy the company. He downsized it. There are some technical glitches, maybe. But by and large, it kind of functions roughly similar just in terms of the core operations of the platform. But, he's running around campaigning for Trump, offering people millions of dollars to vote for Trump effectively. And when I pull up my app nowadays, I get like 7 consecutive Musk tweets
Yeah.
of him promoting his latest pro-Trump town hall, encouraging people to vote Republican, etc. So yeah, I do have an instinctual aversion to this because it's amazing how blatant and brazen it is, and I do think it's done a bit of damage to the viability of X as a platform. Just I know for my own information gathering purposes. Whereas in the past, I could get like fairly credible information fairly easily.
Yeah.
Now I'm just inundated with these Republican slop accounts, and it kind of has diminished the utility of the platform. So that he has become such a Trump, booster, doesn't endear me to the cause of Trump.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing you said that was smart was like what the big tech interference that Republicans were dreaming of in 2016 and 2020. This is that on steroids. I mean, imagine if George Soros bought Twitter and was just promoting George Soros tweets to everyone's time. And you know what? I think you might have mentioned this too. I have like another account. I have the CSPI account, and I never use it, but sometimes I get notifications on my phone from Twitter. In addition to the notifications from my main account, and they are always like Matt Wallace, like this guy with like 2 million followers who's just a complete fake news. It's
Yeah,
always fake news, pro Trump
headline.
stuff. I
I
mean,
mean,
and everyone with Twitter on their phone is getting this.
yeah.
I I didn't I missed what you
I
said.
mean, those types of accounts, they'll just
Yeah,
throw stuff out there and like compose it as though it's a headline.
yeah, yeah. The Twitter is giving this to you. Every single person is getting it. I find this bad and disturbing. Now, Michael, it's hard. I was suspended several times under. Were you ever suspended under the old regime?
I wasn't, and
Okay.
I kind of I find it hard to have. Look, there were certain cases when people were banned under the old regime that I objected to, and at the very least, I would be against anybody being banned permanently, even if they did something genuinely egregious. But I think one reason why I never got banned is because I never just spewed total bullshit.
Yeah. No, you're right,
Uh,
but there has to be. Yeah, there has to be. I never spewed bullshit. I never made up fake
what?
news either. Once I got suspended for saying making a joke. Someone was like saying boomers were bad, and I was like, "Death, yeah, death to boomers."
Oh yeah, I
I
remember.
I
Oh,
literally.
Twitter permanently after that.
What's that?
I remember you saying after you were banned for
Yeah,
that the platform permanently.
yeah, and that lasted like a month. I think I came back. It might have been the Musk thing, knowing Musk was, or I might have come back before that. I don't know. But there was like 2 or 3 situations. I could have been banned for. I could have been banned forever. And so like, yeah, I mean, I'm not happy. I see everything you see, and I hate these people. I just think they're pollution. I just think that they're I have less respect for these people than career criminals. I mean, they're just disgusting. Um,
And also,
and
how about the fact that so I kind of shot myself in the foot by being relatively positive toward the Musk takeover because what was one of the first things that he did? he throttled external links on it.
Yes, he did that too.
Substack. Substack used to be perfectly integrated into Twitter. They were like
Right.
such perfectly complementary platforms. Then Musk decided to get all petty about it, and he kind of screwed over. I mean, I can still get audience, but it
Yeah.
was better when they were so well integrated and mutually complementary. So I don't know. Maybe I should have rooted for the retention of the prior regime. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's hard for me because I think I would have probably been gone eventually under the prior regime. But yeah, I'd like my Substack to have, and I'm followed by Musk, and I'm retweeted by him sometimes. So like that obviously is a benefit. And so yeah, probably on net, it's a benefit. It's a benefit for me. But yeah, you're right. No, you're right. I mean, I agree with you. The Twitter sucks. I'm hoping like like he makes it a little bit, maybe maybe he thinks it's his interest to put pro Trump slop 24/7 in the weeks up to the election, and maybe it goes back to something more normal and more usable after. I really hope so. But yeah, I'm not as bothered. Like a billionaire, like the conservatives are hypocrites, because conservatives are like, we live under an authoritarian regime because big tech censors the Hunter Biden laptop story for very briefly. um, that's like they're hypocrites now. Obviously, they don't see anything untoward. They pretend like they're like you when it's the other side doing it, and now they have nothing negative to say at all. So they're hypocrites. Me, I'm not bothered either way. I just, it's like, rich people influence things, government influences things. I mean, as long as it's not, government banning people or people banning me, I sort of take a not a very I don't get emotional about these things. I just sort of see it as the way of the world.
So I think you did read my RFK article that had been simmering for some time. I did some original reporting in it because people think that I have like RFK derangement syndrome or something, but I object to him for, I think, probably different reasons than you. Like, I don't particularly care about the vaccine stuff. I do think that there was overreach in government policy related to vaccine mandates.
No.
Even got the vaccine, and I was never one to go around promoting any kind of the more fever dreamed theories about the role of the vaccine. So I could see why there could be some political salience in people using in a candidate promoting that issue. Um, my issue, my problem with him has always been more of, I guess, a niche one, in the sense that, I mean, having studied the Vietnam War pretty closely and the Kennedy presidency even prior to RFK's run, and being aware of this mainstream liberal fixation on like glamorizing so-called Camelot, uh, to see RFK burst on the scene and kind of just gobble up hazily ideological, maybe slightly disaffected or uh, right-leaning followers into this whole like Kennedy mythology, and now using it to prop up Trump by legitimizing Trump as some kind of warrior against the deep state and military complex. Because further on the storied legacy of the martyred Kennedys, that whole premise just always so nauseated me that it made me look askance on the entire RFK enterprise, notwithstanding the vaccine component. And he's also just clearly a shapeshifter, where this past spring and summer he was repudiating and denouncing Trump. He accused Trump
Yeah.
of illegally colluding against him with Biden and CNN to exclude him from a debate. He blamed him for the Ukraine war and all other kinds of indignities. And then all of a sudden, he supposedly has like these private consultations with Trump, and now he's running a Maha movement with alternative media, joining RFK Jr. on stage, campaigning with Trump. I mean, maybe I'm partially so aggrieved by it because it discredits the alternative media in my eyes, to the extent that they've joined into this scammy endeavor with RFK, and they're basically just funneling people into
So, Michael, I'm not even
yeah,
familiar with this.
but that's my problem with it.
I'm not even familiar with this world. Who is the alternative media that likes RFK? There must be networks they're plugged into that I'm not even aware of.
Yeah, I mean, so Brett Weinstein threw this rally to
Okay, I know him.
Kennedy, which was a Trump de facto Trump campaign rally, literally, not just kind of indirectly, but it was they had the Maha lectern, which
Hmm.
RFK Jr.'s now his campaign is he transformed his campaign infrastructure into Maha, including his website, which is to encourage everybody who follows his campaign to now vote for Trump. Um, like Russell Brand is going around
Okay, well, I consider these retards. I don't consider this alternative media. I consider this.
the media ecosystem. I could name others like Joe Rogan constantly promoted RFK
Yeah,
Jr.
yeah. I don't
Uh,
media. I consider like outlets to be media. I don't,
don't drop too many people, but like I'm saying, like prominent sort of political podcasters, maybe not, maybe slightly apolitical in general, but like comedians and stuff, because they were so enthralled with the supposed esteemed.
why do you expect anything from them?
What
Like if I see Alex Jones is acting inconsistent or saying things that don't make sense. I don't like be like, oh, Alex, that drives me crazy. It's like no, I just see him as a crazy person. If you're seeing Eric Weinstein or Brett Weinstein, either one, as your like intellectual lodestar, somebody who you expect to get the straight truth from,
I,
these people are out of their minds.
there's a broader ecosystem of people as well. Even like Maine, like he would constantly be given just flattering ass kissing interviews like on all the main political podcasts like Breaking Points, which I
Yeah,
don't.
okay, it's a little high. Yeah, it's higher than Brett Weinstein.
Yeah,
Okay.
Hill Rising show. I mean, but in fairness to the Hill Rising show, they did have me come on and debate one of the supposed like RFK campaign operatives right after he
No,
lost, right after he
cool.
withdrew. So I mean, again, I'm generalizing. I didn't want to make it like about individual personalities necessarily,
Yeah.
but I don't know. What do you make of my historic? I mean, I acknowledge that a lot of it is driven by like my revulsion at this like historical revision. It's not even revisionism because that can be useful. Uh, Historical distortions that are then used to elevate, now being used to elevate Trump, and credulous people just follow along with it, and I find it really revolting.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I dislike RFK, it's not just vaccines and so forth. It is, I think he's generally a bad person. He's wrong on everything and a bad person. Like you to get both of those together is very is a unique accomplishment. So I don't know how much you looked into his thing with his wife, where he basically has this diary of like I don't remember dozens of women, 30 women or something he cheated on her with. It writes in this self-pitying way, why do these women keep attacking me? Like why am I so irresistible? I mean, the diary, the his wife, who's the mother of like his four children, finds it, eventually kills herself. He does this thing with Olivia Newsy. She sexts him or something, and he goes to the media or like his people around him are like, oh, she's stalking him, like and there was also media reports that like he was bragging to people, like this is how it got around. So he's like 70 something, and he's like getting these nudes, and he's married again, obviously, and so he's a piece of shit. And then you like all the political stuff that you brought out, which I didn't know before. It's the same thing. He's just using these. He's using these third parties. They're getting excited. Ooh, we're gonna have a celebrity on our ballot. And then he just like does a 180. He goes to Trump. Why does he go to Trump? Because Kamala won't meet with him. Kamala like won't give him any even like a symbolic position. So if he wants any power, any influence in government, any reason to be in the news, MAGA is the only direction he can go in, right? And so like you take all this together, he's just like this guy who's like wrong on everything. He's a piece of shit, treats all the women in his life like garbage, treats everyone in politics like garbage, has no consistent principles, and is only in it for like his own ego. And like to the extent he has any ideology, it's like banning vaccines, it's like banning vaccines or making or having less approval for vaccines or whatever. And it's like, yeah, this is an awful person. Like, I'm glad you have a distaste for him, but I don't see the good in him. I just think I think what you're bringing out is just like another piece of the puzzle, the general the general story, the impression I have of RFK in my head.
The personal foibles don't affect me nearly as much. If they did, I don't know how you could also not object to Trump's personal foibles. I mean, maybe RFK is worse.
He's had
But
fewer. He didn't write it in a diary. I don't know. He did. Yeah.
to me, it's more his political project that I object to. Like, even if he were the most faultless person on earth in terms of his private life, I find the political project he's currently embarked upon to just be so instinctually repulsive that
Yeah.
private.
His project is
I mean,
his pro-
how am I the only one? I mean, maybe I've missed it. Somebody out
No,
there.
you're the only one who is still expecting Brett Weinstein to be
I'm not.
sensible. Because I look at RFK and I see, okay, I've already dismissed him as a crazy person, a bad person. And this kind of political project is exactly like what a bad person who's only self-interested would do. They would funnel this energy just for his own power into this thing that makes no logical sense, like Maha. Now, now I'm a Trump guy, I'm a MAGA, and they're going to put all these, Heritage Foundation people and Federal Society people in government, right? It's something you do when you're just like a person who's just like shitty. And like I was expecting RFK to be shitty, and I expect everyone who likes RFK to be shitty, and you're like surprised because everyone
I'm
who
not surprised. I'm just underscoring my disdain.
okay, well
Including
that's
by
good.
how is it that I appear to be one of the only people with any even media adjacent sort of like national profile, as insignificant as mine is, to have simply gone around to these minor third parties, state parties that RFK petitioned to receive their presidential nomination, and just straight up swindled them, and it just doesn't get covered because on the one hand, the liberals are more interested in just screeching that he's a anti-vax conspiracy theorist, which again I don't really even care that much about at this point. And the right-wing media, you know, they just want to valorize him as this selfless person who was screwed over by the DNC. I mean, another hilarious aspect of this that wasn't covered anywhere is that I actually did something unusual. I read the New York court rulings on his residency, where he lives in Los Angeles, but then he wanted to pick a vice presidential running mate who also happened to live in California. That could pose some constitutional problems, but she, divorced one of the founders of Google, so had $1 billion. So he decided that he was going to claim his residence was in New York and just fabricated his residency. Like he admitted under oath in testimony that he did not live in the house that he cited as his
Yeah.
residency. But if you follow the prevailing right-wing chatter on this, when he endorsed Trump, everybody was just convinced that he was forced out of the race by the quote-unquote DNC. When
Yeah.
he fabricated his residency, any high-profile political candidate would have something as basic as their residency scrutinized by opponents and the media.
Yeah.
So one of the fallacies of his whole campaign exercise is that any misfortune that befell him was automatically assumed to be the dirty work of his Democratic,
Yeah.
conspirators, the Democrats who were conspiring against him. And there was a lot of Democratic groups who were funding litigation to challenge his ballot access. That's true, but nobody forced him to fabricate his residency. I mean, it's just so bizarre. And
Yeah.
so I guess this saintly image of him that's developed and is now being used to prop up Trump. I just can't. I find it
Yeah.
intolerable.
Michael, okay, so I'm gonna have to go in like 15 minutes. What I want to do is there's something I've wanted to try, which is I want to try to share this link on Twitter. I don't know, it might just end the whole meeting. So you see this little thing at the bottom that's like a little arrow to send it. Okay, so I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna send it to Twitter. If it works, we'll do 15 more minutes. If not, we'll just say goodbye. Is that okay? And we'll do questions. We'll probably do questions for 10 or 15 minutes.
I'll retweet it, I guess, if it works.
Okay, so I'm going to try to do it now. So if it doesn't work, goodbye, everyone. But if it does, we're still here. Okay, I first step, now it's prompting me to pick an outlet. Okay, I'm putting Twitter. Okay, are you still there, Michael?
Yeah, I'm here.
Everyone. Okay, so it's good. It's letting me tweet without leaving the app. Michael and I, you might not be able to just go in. We could probably do it from your phone or whatever other device you're using. Everyone,
Uh,
Michael and I are taking questions.
are you doing this from an iPad or a phone?
iPad.
Okay, I do have an iPad. I should have powered it up for this.
Okay, can we next time we'll do this at the beginning because I didn't want to do it because Michael and I are taking questions for the next 15 minutes. Join us. Michael, Tracy, and I are taking questions for next year. Okay. Posted. Okay. And now you can go retweet me. Yeah, we should do this. We'll do this at the very beginning next time.
Okay, yeah. Well, maybe people find it exciting for us to be working it out in real time. Yeah.
Okay. Let's I guess take a question. Yeah, I've got a hold on, let me text my significant other and tell her 15 minutes.
I'm not sure I see your. Oh, did
Yeah,
you?
I
Did
see
you?
it. I see it on my timeline. I didn't tag you.
Oh, okay. I'll find it.
Okay. Someone ask a question. We'll answer it right now. Okay, let's see. So you see it, right? Is that my tweet has 54 views now? It has one reply. Andrew Dolgan. How does Richard? Uh, okay, so I didn't clarify. It's at the link. I said that right here. The Richard take questions next year, and then Andrew Dolgan is responding with his question there. What is your opinion on the word fascist? Do you have an opinion on the word fascist, Michael? Let's go rapid because I've got to go
I
10 minutes. We're gonna have time to.
ability to the use of the word fascist, unless you're referring to interwar Italy. I think it's just used as a synonym of bad by and large. I know people can have much more far reaching kind of theoretical analyses of what fascism consists of and how it applies to the current situation. But I really think it's just overwhelmingly, it's a lazy analytical shortcut to try to analogize current political conditions to the 1930s and 40s, which I think is just a scourge more broadly. So, if you think that Trump poses some unique danger, okay, let's examine that on its own terms without having to resort to this crutch of invoking a an alarmist historical parallel. So I don't use the term. Funnily enough, Trump calls the Democrats and by extension Kamala fascists as well. So now we have both, and Kamala also at the CNN town hall last night was asked about the recent reporting on Trump's subordinates calling him a fascist, and she agreed that Trump was a fascist. So where does that get us? It just gets us to a point where both candidates are calling one another really bad and then using a certain synonym to convey that sentiment.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I agree. I don't have much to add to that. Here's Aon Tyrell. Do you think there is a risk that Trump could become anti-AI if convinced by certain conservatives that it's evil? I don't know if there are conservatives who are. Should this tendency be influenced by online conservatives discourages? I don't think that many. I mean, like I don't know, like Tucker just sort of hates technology. Elon Musk is a little bit scared of AI, but he's involved with it. I don't think he's. I don't think he's necessarily anti AI though. No, I think these people like Mark Andreessen, I think is like somebody who's like very pro accelerationist on AI. And those people love Trump, and I think they're sensible too because Trump is going to basically take a heads off approach to tech. I don't think he's going to be convinced to be anti AI. You hear me, Michael? Are you there?
Yeah, yeah. I guess I agree. I mean, I don't think that Trump has any particular views on AI. So I don't know. I'll let your answer stand on that one.
Okay. Do you relatedly? Someone says, "Do you think GOP will embrace techno futurism?" It's very funny. I think they're techno futurist in practice, but not in not in theory. Like all the online right people are afraid of technology and progress. All these tech guys like Thiel and Musk and Andreessen who like Trump, they basically want government out of the way, and I think those guys are probably going to get their way. So it's this very weird thing where there's this gap. It's like the opposite of the RFK thing you're talking about, where like all these left wing people like, oh, MAGA is like anti-war, and then in like reality, he's gonna make Pompeo his Secretary of Defense. I think there's a similar thing that happens on the right.
I was reading there was a profile yesterday in the Washington Post of Nicole Shanahan, who's who was formerly Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s vice presidential running mate, who he picked because she happened to have been divorced in 2023 from one of the founders of Google.
Right.
Had like $1 billion to fund RFK Jr.'s campaign. That led to the whole residency issue where they were both from the same state. But one of the quotes in the article was about how Nicole Shanahan is now like fully integrated into like the Republican campaign machine, and she's going around like basically saying that Democrats are demonic. She's like alludes to the idea that Democrats are run by a cabal of pedophiles and things.
Where was this article? Who wrote this? I want to see this.
Says that the Uniparty is afraid of her and RFK because the Uniparty doesn't want anybody to investigate how the Uniparty itself is under satanic influence. And she's also saying that Democrats are all about like thwarting natural human progression. So like they want anti-aging technologies. They're into transhumanism. So you have to the
Democrats.
To the extent that the Republicans and Trump have incorporated this RFK Shanahan tendency, apparently they're against transhumanism and they think it's like ungodly.
Okay, so you have to wonder who's smarter, Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, or Shanahan and RFK, because they believe in exactly an opposite versions of Donald Trump. And we could leave that to the viewers.
Yeah. One thing, I mean, what do you make of this? Just on the Ukraine war, I don't know if you saw this, but there's been reporting. A lot of it's a little bit questionable, just because it's coming largely, it seems, from either claims of Zelensky and Ukraine government officials, plus U.S. and Western intelligence services. But today it was reported that North Korea has probably taken the most overt steps yet in getting involved into the ground troops. So the reporting now, I don't know how confirmed it is, but that North Korean troops are massing on the Kharkiv border, which to me ought to be more troubling to people than it's being generally suggested, because to globalize a conflict in Eastern Europe over like the Donbass, so now it's become a proxy for additional conflicts like North versus South Korea. That does give disturbing, premonitions of some sort of World War type scenario. I'm not saying that means that World War III is going to break out tomorrow, but it's like a gradual buildup potentially. And how bizarre is it? Just like if I had told you 2 years ago that a war in Ukraine could be a proxy for the inter-Korean conflict, you would have probably found that baffling.
Yeah.
And for the war to have dragged on as long as it has, I think sort of made somewhat inevitable that these additional conflicts could be glommed onto it. So it strikes me as a fairly disturbing development.
Yeah, I so luckily the last week I had Andrei Lankov on my podcast. He's one of the world's maybe the foremost North Korean expert, and I asked him about this, and he basically said that they're just doing it for the money. They're so poor in North Korea that like hiring tens of thousands of soldiers to do stuff is just financially actually a very big deal to them. So if that's the case, they just want the money. That's interesting. Like, how will that like escalate or lead to something else? I don't know. Like, I think it's like disturbing that like the Putin regime does this. Like, North Korea is like the worst regime in the world. The fact that they're going to bring them bring them into Europe potentially. They could help. They could actually help the Russians quite a bit because they cost nothing and they're very disciplined and I'm sure very smart. And so yeah, it's disturbing from the perspective of like Russia's going to gain advantage from this. Is this going to like somehow lead to world war? That's strikes me as unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, whatever North Korea's motives, financial or otherwise, for the war, for like the ideological contours or the geopolitical contours of the war to have point where it could now be a proxy conflict between North and South Korea. It kind of already had been for some time because South Korea was indirectly providing material to Ukraine,
Yeah.
Poland, or other Eastern European countries, and there had been reports for quite a while now that North Korea was supplying armaments to Russia. So for it now to potentially be even more direct,
Yeah.
again, and I don't want to set the benchmark as it's troubling only if it results in a full blown world war scenario. Because what does that even look like? It's just another step potentially in that direction that I think people should be
Yeah.
more cognizant of. Um,
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I've got a. This is this is good for my Substack. It's actually growing, but due to this thing, I think people have to subscribe to the Substack to in order to join actually, or to subscribe to one of us, because this is only open to free subscribers. So it's a good way to get people to join us.
okay,
So let's
subscribe to
take.
me. Well, then I don't know if I should promote that or I'm not even sure if as
No, no. Well, we're about to be done anyway. Um, let's take Andrew's last question because I got to go pick up my kids.
let's,
How
let's
does
I mean, I saw some questions earlier on that maybe we could go to.
Okay? Well, pick anything. Pick anything, and we'll answer it.
Okay. Somebody says I heard Richard's going to campaign for Trump in Pennsylvania. Is that true?
I think it's a joke.
Okay. Let's see. There was another one that I saw that I remember being somewhat interesting. Yeah, Michael Tracy proposes the free market. I don't know.
That's it. Well, you're way at the beginning. You're like an hour ago. Yeah, this was
Yeah,
before we even asked. We
the
started
very
saying takers.
Tracy should write in whoever he affirmatively supports. Parentheses, no one. That's correct.
Okay, these aren't
Uh,
questions.
no, they're not. They're statements. Are you going to be live streaming on election night? That's a question.
We should do that. Yes, we should. Okay, I'm gonna say I'm gonna live stream. Hopefully with you, Michael. If not, anyone who will live stream with me. Yes, I think that would be a really fun thing to do. Okay, yeah, I just heard my significant other say, "Let's go." So it's been fun, and yeah, thank you, everyone.
All right. The significant other has spoken, so we will now
All right,
cease operations. Goodbye.
bye, Michael.